Hi, welcome to Therapy Playground.
I'm Misty.
And I'm Julieanne. Today we are going to be talking about some difficulties that children may have transitioning and the behaviors that result from those difficulties. And some things that we can do to help eliminate those behaviors or decrease them. Misty is a play therapist here at Therapy Playground, and she deals with behaviors that children have on a daily basis. That's a big part of her job description, as well as other parts, fine motor, speaking. But behavior is one big part of her job. So, Misty, what are some of the behaviors that you deal with children who have difficulty transitioning?
Kids that have difficulty transitioning will be stubborn, they'll cry, they'll whine, they'll have an overall temper tantrum. During therapy, they will actually want to do like a free play instead of a structured play. And that's kind of more based on, for instance, they'll want to color, or they want to play with the shape sorter, and they don't want to transition to like maybe a puzzle or flashcards. You know, as a therapist, you hear parents mention to you that, they have a hard time with if they go to the pool or they go out to dinner or they go shopping, they can't get them in the car, they can't get them out of the buggy and food line, and they have a hard time with that.
Yeah. So, what are some things that you do in your therapy session to help, decrease those behaviors or eliminate them, to help the kids transition to different activities more smoothly?
Well, we'll actually do like verbal cueing. We'll talk a lot about what's going to happen, what is happening, and kind of talk to them during the activity. Because children, they basically excel from having a routine or knowing what to expect. Also, if we offer them choices. For instance, if they wanted, they both like Mr. Potato Head or shape sorter, we'll ask them, hey, which one do you want to play with? And they'll feel like they're kind of like in control of the activity. But in reality, we're going to end up doing that type of activity, but they're able to kind of choose more or less, and then you get a better result with that, and the coping with that becomes better. Some parents can also use pictures, PECs, to kind of like let them know what they're going to do next as well. I always try to tell parents that, it's kind of like if you're watching your favorite movie and at the best part someone turns the TV off, well, that's kind of how your little kiddos feel when someone comes in and says, hey, you're going to do this right now, and they do that to them.
Yeah, so those verbal cues kind of help them transition from one activity to the next. And I heard you say that kids are really like that structure, and maybe having a picture schedule or having a routine of sorts that they're used to. When they're doing the potato head, they know that they put the pieces in, and then when all the pieces are in, they take the pieces out and they put them into the bag, and then they get to move on to the next activity, and giving them those choices that they can choose next, so they don't get hung up on Mr. Potato Head and want to keep playing with Mr. Potato Head, because they know once the pieces are in, the pieces come out, and then it's something else. So having that routine really does help. So what are some things that parents can do to help transition activities that they do normal?
Well, as I mentioned, like with the verbal cueing, they can actually talk to them as the activity is about to happen. For instance, let's say they're at the pool, and before they get out of the pool, they say, hey, this last splash, this is our last lap or last splash, then we're going to get out and go have lunch. Then during the activity where they're actually out of the pool, then let's dry up so we can go and have lunch. And then after, great job drying up, now we're going to go have lunch. So it's kind of more or less like, okay, you're talking to them as you're doing each step. You're just not snatching them out of the pool, drying them up, and you're like tucking them under your arm and running to the car because it's time to go.
Yeah, and you want to get them out as fast as possible because you don't want them to throw a fit in front of everyone and be so embarrassed. Yeah.
Yes, and you don't want to be embarrassed in front of everybody. But in reality, giving them that time to cope with the transitioning. Okay, this is my last lap. We're getting out of the pool. We're drying up real quick, and then we're putting on our stuff and we're getting in the car because we're gonna go and eat lunch. Because come on, they're probably hungry after the swimming pool. So you kind of want to go ahead and do that. You have to also remember that sometimes this is not going to work. Sometimes it's going to work really great. Other times, you can't do all of these activities. You can't there's going to be days that you're not going to be able to do like a transitioning with snack and pool and bath and grocery stores, because it can become overwhelming for them. You know, sometimes it's just easier like, hey, this week I'm going to work on snack time. And if it takes longer than a week, then that's fine. But just try to go ahead and work on one thing at a time, because if, you know, you're overwhelmed if you try to do more than one. And especially if you have other kids, if you work, if you have other obligations, it's difficult. So you don't want to overwhelm yourself, and you don't want to overwhelm your child.
Yeah. I really like that example you gave us about, you know, giving the cues before it happens so the kid is aware, okay, this many and then I'm done. And then still cueing them as you're coming out, you know, all right, we're drying off because we're going to do this. We're drying off because we're going to do that. Continuous cueing of what's going on so that they're aware. And then, all right, let's go. We're going to have lunch. Let's sit down and have lunch. Those continuous verbal cues was really helpful. That kind of reminded me of one of my friends was telling me that her brother, who is a new father, she had his son over for a play date with her son, and he came and it was time for his son to go, and he said, this isn't going to be good. He already knew that as soon as he told him it was time to go, he was going to come out in a whole outfit. And he goes, come on, it's time to go. And he goes, no, I don't want to go, no. And he's like, come on, it's time to go, let's go. No, and he started running from him. He tried to grab him. Let's go, it's time to go. And then she's like, what are you doing? Stop. What are you doing? And he's like, I told you this is going to happen. She's like, you can't do it like that. And so she sat down and she said, all right, did you have fun at my house playing? And he was like, yeah. Do you want to come back? Okay, good, you can come back again, but right now it's time to leave. Do you want some cookies before you go? We made some cookies, let's go get some cookies. And he got up, she goes, all right, you need to get your shoes before we leave, and then we'll get some cookies. And he went over, he got his shoes, like, come on, let's go. Let's get a bag and put your cookies in. And she talked him through it the whole time. All right, well, I hope you have fun. We'll come back and see you next time. And he's like, okay. And he walked out, and, you know, her brother was like, what? How did you do that? You know, that constant cueing and just talking and letting them know what's going to happen. You know, that really helped, as well as giving them rewards for doing something good. She gave him the cookies for putting on his shoes, for, you know, listening and behaving. So, you know, I completely understand what you're talking about, and parents can really use this to help out.
And it's just like I said before, it's kind of like you see, like you mentioned, that the dad was anxious. He already knew that this child was going to have like an overall fit leaving. And he was anxious. The kid was going to be anxious. And instead of having, like, talking about it, they both were, like, unprepared for, like, the outing to leave out of this place. Yeah. And that's why it's so important for them to kind of just talk it out and take your time. It doesn't have to be right away, but if you know you need to leave at 3 o'clock, then, you know, start trying to wrap things up at 2:30.
And preparing your kid for that. So using the verbal cues, like Misty said, creating structure in your home so the kid knows that usually after I have a bath, I go to bed. That he knows that, you know, these certain cues, so he's not getting anxious for transitioning, or you're just not surprising him and ripping them out of that movie, as she gave us that example. Some kids who have difficulty processing verbal cues may benefit from pictures instead of the verbal cues. So, you know, giving them a picture of the bath time or bedtime. Okay, pretty soon we're going to have bedtime, and pairing that with the verbal cues are things that can really help. You can also you know, transition these things into the school. If your kid is having trouble transitioning at school, and you've realized that some of these things have worked at home, talk to their teachers and see if they can incorporate some of the things that you've learned into school to help your kid better transition. Hope that you've gotten a lot of good information. If you have more questions about ways you can help your children transition, you may contact us at therapyplayground.com. We have our phone number there. Or if you're already a patient here at Therapy Playground, feel free to talk to your therapist about it and see if they have any ideas that you can use that are specific for your child. Thanks for watching.